Okay, now we were discussing a measurement system, and we were also discussing that a good measurement system normally have four basic ingredients. First stage is sensor transducer stage, which is here. It senses. Then in the second stage, it is the signal conditioning stage, means we amplify. For example, if you want to read 0.01 MPa, it is very small value. But if you make a scale which is very amplified, might be 10 degree, a huge deflection will show you even zero point zero 0.01 MPa. Then finally, output stage where you take your reading, and before that, feedback control if required. So these are the four stages, those are explained here. We already discussed these things, so we will move forward. Uh, Before going moving forward, we also discussed that we should, when we want to have a proper, we need to make a proper experimental test plan. We should know, we should know that there is some parameters. For example, we should know what is my final equations, what I need to measure. We should know which is the most important variable and which will drive our readings, and which are independent, dependent these variables. So we should know, and so we cannot measure unnecessary variables. Similarly, we should not ignore the important variables because there are too many things. So we have had a discussion on this. Then we saw there is independent variable, there is dependent variable. Okay. From now, we will see here, and I will also make a discussion with you. Variables. We consider a thermodynamic experiment. So there is an experimental test plan in which we want to measure the boiling point of a water. Okay, we already know water boils at 100 degrees centigrade or also boils at 212 Fahrenheit degree centigrade. We already know. But now we want to perform experiment. So we performed three experiments, but main thing was that all the three experiments conducted from different days. For example, this is the experiment you can say for the first day, this is the experiment second day, and this is the experiment for the third day. So three experiments performed but on three different days. What was the experiment? We keep raising the temperature of the water until it starts boiling. We know that when water starts boiling, there is no more further rise in temperature, as you can see here. Once the water starts boiling, there is no more rise in temperature. So this is a boiling temperature. So temperature scale is on y-axis, time to reach that temperature is on this axis. Here, if you just want to measure the water to boil and what is its temperature, we already know it's around 100 degree. Then why these are different three values? They are three values, they are different. So it means there is some problem with the experiment test plan, or there are some issues, or it is natural, or these are okay. So what we need to discuss here is that why should the data from these three identical tests are different? Means that same test, same liquid water, same you can say test plans, why they are different? Why they are different? I want to discuss with you people what you think why they are different. Can you make any guess? Anybody answer me why these three temperatures that we measure for the boiling water are different? Why they are not same? What is the reason? I am waiting. First answer he replied, accuracy can be the one thing. We will see, discuss in detail the accuracy. Okay, this is the one reason he's mentioning. Any other answer? I am waiting. Any other reason you should say? One more thing, accuracy or precision. One more thing, for example, the error, error of the instrument is, we can say, it is fixed. It is 0 point, for example, 1. It means if answer is between 100.1 or 99.9 or 100.1, due to this inherent error of the measurement instrument, we will say our answers are okay, because this is a capability. But one person says different is the initial conditions. We will see initial condition, but at least you are thinking that's very good. This is what I want. Initial condition, I think. In fact, if you look closely in the slide, answer is here. Also, I give an hint here. Just look closely in the figure. Okay, I give you more hint. Answer is here. Main answer is here. Main answer is also here. So these two things, if you can notice, answer is there. What is the answer now? Can you now discuss why boiling point is different, not 100? What is this experiment? Nobody have answer? Mercury. Mercury is the material inside, okay? I am saying atmospheric pressure. In fact, Al-Walid gave me the most perfect answer, which I am looking. Al-Walid, good Al-Walid. We know water boils at 100 degree. You know why water boils at 100 degree? Because atmospheric pressure is standard, which is 1 atmosphere. I will ask you a question and you will let me know. Can water boil at 120 degree? Do you know? Can water boil? Why water will boil at 120? Why? What is the reason? What is the reason? Water pressure, atmospheric pressure. Now answers are start coming. Atmospheric pressure is the reason. Can water boil at 10 degree only? 10 degree. You know 10 degree, your AC works around this. Yes, again atmospheric pressure. It means if we change the atmospheric pressure, then water can boil at different temperatures. Since if you go at high altitudes, for example, at mountains, Taif might be much higher places above. Might not be boiling at 100, might be less than 100 because atmospheric pressure is less. So now, if you look closely at the figure, for this one, atmospheric pressure is test one, which is this one. Atmospheric pressure is different, which is 30.2 in terms of mercury. Then test this, it is 29.7, so less. Atmospheric pressure is less, water is boiling at less temperature, and here it is in between them. So water is boiling at different reading. So here in this case, the reason everything was same. So the main reason that water is boiling at different temperatures is the atmospheric pressure. So here is the answer, which is written here. We can now discuss this. First thing, first answer also came accuracy. I already told you we will accept that our measurement instrument has an error, inherent error of 0.1. 0.1 error mean if answer is 100.1, we will consider is okay. For example, I can say it is 212 in terms of Fahrenheit, let's say. So 2.2.1 is also okay answer, and 2.11.9 because difference is zero point 0.1. Both our answer will be considered okay. But here we can say 212.5 way higher. Yes, it is good range, but it is again well below this little range. If I say inherent error or inherent accuracy, so then main reason will be barometric pressure, atmospheric pressure. So if we want to have a measurement system in which we want that our readings should always be the same, our measurement of boiling of water should always be the same, we should also control the atmospheric pressure. If atmospheric pressure is not in our control during my experiment, my answer will be not okay. So in this case, it was evident from the figure, in fact, evident from the figure, three different readings, three different atmospheric pressures. So these were the readings, it is clear. So now it means if next time I discuss with you, I want to measure the temperature of water and I want to make sure it should be exact answer or very close to the exact answer, you must control the atmospheric pressure if possible. So by controlling the atmospheric pressure, your answer will be very good. So now it means when we are taking our measurements, we should able to control the variables. We should know what are the variables, which variables will be affected, and we must able to control it. For example, if in this figure we don't know this information, then it would be very difficult for us. Very difficult for us. What is the reason? Sometimes we will say worker is not doing good. I know worker is perfect. We can say instrument is bad. We know instrument is also good. Then we will spend a lot of time. So that's why always know what are independent variables, what are dependent variables, or what are extraneous variables. So we always keep looking our variables, those can affect my or our experiments. Last time we were saying there are variables, but there are also parameters. Variable, for example, I want to measure atmospheric pressure. So we know density, gravity, and h, in which h is my independent variable. I will change it independently. Pressure will become a dependent variable. So these are my variables. But today we are looking at another term, and it is called parameter. So what is parameter mean? A parameter is defined as a functional group of variables. In fact, it is not just one variable, but it is a group of variables. For example, moment of inertia and Reynolds number. Look at this. If you know, if there is a beam in bending and I want to know what is the bending stress, this formula is used. In this formula, bending moment, which is applied load, y is the deflection, and look at here, I moment of inertia. This is called parameter. Why? Because moment of inertia is equal to base height cube. If this is my base, this is my height, shape of the beam. It is the shape of the beam. Cross section. This was the beam. Load is applied here. So this is base, which is B, and this is height. So it is the shape of the, in fact, cross sectional area of the beam. So here in this case, moment of inertia is my control parameter. If I want to measure good value of bending stress, our target should be that this parameter should not change and it should be constant. If it is, in this parameter, there are further variables. If they are also keep on changing, my answer will also be keep on changing, and the more variables are changing, more efforts will be there. So we want that either independent variables should change and remaining should remain constant. So there's a very important parameter which is called Reynolds number. Reynolds number is the one which tells if some liquid is flowing in the pipe, it is turbulent flow, it is laminar flow, what is tight kind of flow. So again, it is a parameter because it is a set of different variables in which density is there, velocity is there, diameter is there, and viscosity terms are there. So these four terms combine to make one parameter, which is called Reynolds number. Again, if I'm going to perform an experiment in which Reynolds number is there, then our target should be, if this number remain constant, then might be it will be much easy for me to perform the experiments and to take measurements. If these parameters keep on changing, uh, we will require a lot of expertise, lot of extra work. So now we know there are variables and there are parameters. Parameters are set of different variables, density, velocity, whatever. We need to measure, we need to find these parameters. So they will also affect, and our target is, if parameter is controlled or is not changing, it will go in our favor. Look at here. A parameter that has an effect on the behavior of measured variable is called control parameter. So first thing, what is control parameter? I know I want to measure the bending stress. In bending stress formula, there is one parameter, moment of inertia. So moment of inertia is going to affect if I need to measure the bending stress. So it is called control parameter. Well, so how we measure these control parameters, this is separate discussion. We are not going in that detail. So there are many methods, similarity method or dimension analysis method, that how we find our parameters. But we know, we will discuss here, there are parameters. So if parameter is controlled, means if we are able to maintain a value of control parameter during the experiment, they are called control parameters. Control, not changing. Control parameters mean parameters those are not changing during the experiments. So if we are able to maintain a control constant value, it will be good for our experiment design or experiment test plan. For example, look at here, there is an experiment. What is this? A fan is there. This fan, what if fan will turn, what will happen? It will take air from this side and will throw on the other side. This is the purpose of the fan. Take air from one side and throw it on the other side. Okay. Now let's see. For example, the flow rate. Flow rate normally represented by Q, and unit most of the time might be volume per unit time. So meter cube per second, meter cube per minute. So you will have these kind of issues. So some volume flow rate is there. Some volume is flowing. Q is flowing. Some mass flow rate is there. Okay. It is yes. Abdul Aziz, you can ask your. Please turn on your mic. Ila Abdul Aziz, you raised your hand. I am waiting for you. Ila Abdul Aziz. Why? Sorry? You raised your hand to say sorry? What wrong you did? It's okay. Okay, let's move forward. So the discharge is flowing. Discharge is some air. So it's flowing by a fan. Now it depends upon which thing. It depends upon the rotational speed. Means, and at which speed fan is rotating. Rotational speed. And this diameter of the fan blade. What is the diameter of the fan blade? Diameter. So fan blade diameter, rotational speed of the blades, it depends upon this. He says if we have three things, discharge and speed and diameter, these three things, then a coefficient is defined which is called flow coefficient. and its flow coefficient formula is this one. So it depends upon flow rate, rotational speed, and size or diameter of the blades. So for a given fan, we know when there is a experiment test plan, so D is almost fixed, fan blade is not changing. So for a fixed D, so therefore this is a controlled, here this variable is controlled. And if the speed is somehow controlled, we are saying if we want to perform an experiment in which D size is fixed and then at the same time rotational speed is also fixed. For example, no change of speed by vary, for example, due to electricity fluctuations, or you are not a regulator, you are not increasing or decreasing the speed, you are fixing the speeds. Somehow, if it is constant, so diameter is constant, rotational speed is constant. So then the flow rate associated with the speed can be measured. So can be measured mean we can put an instrument here, for example, any instrument, and it can give us the reading that this is your volume flow rate. So we know D, we know what is the speed at which fan is rotating, and we measured with the help of experiment somehow this is speed. So we can these three things, then we can calculate the coefficient because this coefficient formula is this one. So if I know what is my diameter, if I know what is my rotational speed, and I measure, for example, we use thermometer to measure the temperature. So there are instruments that those can measure the flow. So if I measure my flow, I can find this flow coefficient. This is how we can plan. If our parameter is controlled, mean parameter is no more changing. So we know that somehow if this is controlled, speed is controlled, then our parameter can be controlled. So this is how we can design tests. Now when we plan tests, so there can be problem with the data, output data for example. So we need to know what can be the problems. For example, look at here, noise and interference. These two type of problems can exist with my data when I take the output. Noise is a random variation. For example, you can see this is random variation in the plot of the data. Although you can see trend is very much good. Trend is something like this. Yes, trend is okay, but it is not smooth. Trend should be something like this, but it is not smooth. In fact, it is lot of variation, lot of variation. So this is called noise. What can be the reason of the noise? He says very difficult. Normally, it is associated with the extraneous variables. We know what are extraneous variables. Extraneous variables, those are very difficult to control. They are not independent, dependent, but they can disturb me. For example, when we want to measure the boiling point of a water, atmospheric pressure was changing. That is my extraneous variable in that case. Means it was there and it was not in my control. What can be other example? You are taking the reading in the form of some voltage. If your excitation temperature, your input temperature, input voltage, electricity power is not good, it is fluctuating, then can also affect, and it can be act as extraneous variables. Means those variables, those are not in your control, but they are there to disturb your results. So you have to open your eyes to check this. Then another, so what is first a problem we have detected? It can be noise. Another is interference. What is interference? An uncontrolled influence that cause the signal to test outcome behave in a different manner from the true behavior. For example, I know my true behavior is this, but when I measured, it is going something like this. So this is called interference, and you can clearly predicting it is going up. So signal plus something is addition in it. So rather than going this way, it is going up. So this is called interference problem with my test. So interference imposes undesirable trend. So trend which should be horizontal, now it is at some angle, and you can see it is almost we can predict trend is going up. So trend is deterministic, but it is due to some interference. So these can also be problem with the data. Here we will see a detailed discussion in which a calibration system is there and a pressure is applied, and we want to check might be if I calibrate my system, which variables are important, which are independent, which are dependent, and how we should discuss. So please carefully look at the problem. He says in the pressure calibration system. So first thing he is telling us, this is a pressure calibration system. It means we want to test that our pressure measurement system is okay or not. So we are going for calibration. For example, you measure your body temperature with the help of a thermometer. But if I question thermometer reading is okay or thermometer reading is bad, how you will verify it? You will go for calibration procedure. So it means there is something measurement system which measures the pressure, and we want to make sure reading is okay or not. So we go for calibration. So calibration is a very powerful term, very special term. Always remember this term. So if sensor transducer, so this is a, you can say, sensor transducer is exposed to a known pressure P. It is exposed to a known pressure P. Okay. The transducer, we already discussed sensor transducer is powered by external supply. This is the external supply system that converts the signal into a voltage. So when pressure is applied, it senses the pressure, and output is in the forms of voltmeter. So later on we can this voltmeter can be converted into pressure. So we can calibrate what pressure is applied and what is output value. And we want to see if output and input values are same, it means our measurement system is okay. But if input pressure is different than output values, then we can say this is a problem with my measurement system and we need to make it okay. We identify the problem and we want to make it okay. When we want to make it okay, we can say calibration is done, procedure is okay. So this is the problem statement in which this is a pressure system. In this pressure system, this is a piston and there's some fluid is there, some air. So when piston moves from left to right, it pressurizes the gas here. When it pressurizes the gas, so reading will appear on the sensor and we can check our input applied pressure is equal our output, so we can verify. So this is a problem statement. The measurement approach is to control the applied pressure. He says, I want to design a test system in which we want to control the applied pressure, means we should know how much pressure we are applying and it is in our control. We don't want fluctuations in our input pressure. It should be, we want it to be constant by measured displacement. He says, how we are able to apply the pressure? The piston will move from left to right. If piston is moved from left to right, we can measure its displacement, that if it is moved 1 millimeter, we can say we should have formula in which 1 millimeter movement of the piston giving this reading, this pressure. The more you move the piston, the more there will be pressure applied. So this is the construction. So it is a piston cylinder system. the gas chosen is obeys the ideal gas law. He says when we are designing this experiment, it obeys a gas. The gas inside obeys the ideal gas law. What is ideal gas? Pressure, volume over T, PV. Very famous relation should be equal to constant. So this is ideal gas equation. If your experiment following this equation, that whatever pressure value, whatever volume value, whatever temperature value, then it is ideal gas equation. Here please note one more thing. The gas chosen closely obeys the ideal gas, hence the position displacement x, which sets the chamber volume. So one thing is clear. If piston moves from left to right, we can check its reading from the scale, how much it is moved. Then what is volume? Normally the volume of a cylinder is cross-sectional area into height, So if this is my cylinder, its diameter is fixed. We know diameter formula is pi r square, which is cross-sectional area into how much it is moved, length in this case. So this is my active volume, which we will consider. So volume is equal to displacement into area. Remember, area is cross-sectional area of the piston. So cross-sectional area is fixed. So this is also fixed. So only one thing is changing here. X means how much your piston is moving along the horizontal distance, and that movement can be read from here. So the more higher value of X, higher pressure. So we know pressure applied by displacement, volume, and temperature of the gas. So these three things are here, and whatever pressure applied on the gas is sensed by the transducer. So whatever transducer is sensing, it will give us reading, digital reading. You can say mechanically applied, digitally measured. If both mechanical and digital readings are okay, we will say our calibration says it is okay. If there is a disturbance, we will correct it. So this is our statement of the problem. And so what is the target? Identify the independent variable. We know there's a pressure, volume, temperature. Identify the dependent variable and identify the extraneous variable. So target is to define these three things if we are going to perform this experiment. Now I will ask the students, I will also name. Tell me what you think, what is the independent variable in this test plan? In which you know there is a volume is this, pressure is there, temperature is there. So what is the independent variable? It means independent mean which can change independently, and it will give us our readings, or it will affect our readings independently. So what is our, so one person says, Mazen, you are saying everything is independent variable. This is what you want to say? One person says temperature is independent. Yes. One person says temperature is independent. Yes. Good answer. Any other thing? There is a more important independent variable is there still. You should be able to look at this. What is the most important independent variable? I told you what is volume. Volume is current is only taking the reading. Understand the role of the current in this case. Whatever pressure is applied, it is giving me digital output. So it is not independent variable. I am giving you hint. What is volume? Displacement which we apply into cross-sectional area which is fixed. So now look at here, which is independent variable? Again, if I say volume, piston stroke, area, which is the independent variable? Basim, you are listening to me, make your choice. Mazen says displacement. I asked a question, Basim. Rakan, cross-sectional area. Basim, I want to listen from you now. Are you there? Are you wake up? Basim, reply me. Please be attentive. Respond me. These are important things. If you impress me more, you listen to me, bonus marks are coming for individual persons. I always keep notice who is good in the class and bonus 4 to 5 marks. Where is Basim? Basim is not responding. Basim, are you there? After a long time. So just tell me what you think. If there is a volume, there is a displacement, there is a cross-sectional area. What do you think displacement, cross-sectional area, volume, which is independent variable? Basim, make your choice. You have to answer. Basim is not giving answers. Anyhow, the other students gave me the answers. Abdul Bari says displacement. Yes, now you are coming to the point. Displacement is the independent, most important parameter. How I am performing the test? By moving the piston. So piston movement generating pressure. So displacement is the most important independent variable. This is what I am doing. And how we are, it is in the volume formula. Volume displacement measured multiplied by cross-sectional area. So cross-sectional area is not independent variable. It is fixed. It is no more changing. Whether you are left side, whether you move on the right side, piston cylinder is fixed. So piston cylinder is fixed. It is controlled. It is not an independent variable. Another thing, cross-sectional area, displacement is independent variable. But there is another independent variable which somebody already gave a hint. It was, for example, temperature. How? For example, if displacement is fixed, I fix the displacement. Piston is no more moving. If I increase the temperature of the gas, for example, if piston is fixed, temperature is increasing, pressure will increase. Although volume is controlled. Volume is, I fix the volume, then pressure will increase. So if I want to increase the pressure, I will fix the volume, piston is no more using, you keep on adding the heat, pressure will rise more. So again, temperature can be an independent variable. And what can be the extraneous variables? These are those variables, they are not independent, they are not dependent, but still they are there and they are affecting my results. They can destroy my results. Anybody, what can be these variables? Those are difficult to identify, but they can disturb my results. Again, look at the picture, you can find. Density, in fact, there is no liquid here. So no density, voltage output. Okay, good. One answer is going towards right. Fluctuation in the output, especially excitation power means the power to turn on the sensor transducer reading. If there is a fluctuation, although everything was okay, pressure measurement was okay, sensor is checking everything okay, might be it is fluctuating. Its purpose was to turn on my system and give me reading, but his problem is there, so again my reading can be destroyed. So power source is my extraneous variable. any other thing that can be my extraneous variable. So first thing, power source, electricity, pressure. Pressure is the one which is already we want to measure. So it is dependent variable. So it is not extraneous. Temperature, we already discussing, yes, temperature is dependent variable. Is there anything else temperature but temperature of the environment, outside environment? Atmospheric pressure, yes, atmospheric pressure is there affecting here. So it can also be affecting my things if my atmospheric pressure increase. Another thing is outside temperature. If outside room temperature suddenly cools down and it is not perfectly insulated, then it will also affect my result. I only want that. So outside temperature can also affect. There is also thing wires, cables. Wires and cables are not thermally insulated proper, or they are not insulated, then their field can affect each other. If wires are not properly placed and their magnetic field affecting things, it can also be extraneous variables. So now we have a good discussion already, and we will go through this sample problem again. Problem is, this is a piston cylinder system. Piston movement will generate pressure, and we want to check this reading is okay or not. So what we done, we will go for calibration. How we will calibrate? We'll put a sensor run by power source. We will take the reading and we will see the output identifies the input. So system is okay. But for this system to perform experiment, being a good engineer, we should know what is my independent variable, what is my dependent variable, and what is my extraneous variable if I want to perform this thing. And we have discussed good discussion that for the ideal gas equation, this is ideal gas equation. Ideal gas equation, pressure, volume, temperature. So what T is the gas temperature, not the atmospheric temperature or outside temperature. So piston displacement makes the volume. So volume is equal to piston displacement into cross-sectional area. So piston displacement is my first independent variable. Another variable that can be independent is temperature. If somehow we are supplying the gas a heat or it is rejecting the heat to the atmosphere, it's this. So it can also be my independent variable. He says we already discussed that pressure or is this equation. I want that this thing constant and temperature should also be constant. It should not change. It means if somehow we are making the system such that if temperature rises, it rejects heat to the atmosphere. If temperature decreases, it takes heat from the atmosphere. So we can also do something so temperature remain constant. If temperature remain constant, it will make life easy for us because then we will be only dealing with pressure and displacement. So this is how we perform experiments. We want our variables unnecessary to affect my things. So in this case, if I need to measure pressure, volume, temperature, in this case, if I say I will do something that temperature will not change, okay, I say please, thank you, then I will only work with pressure and volume to take my readings. So temperature, and I want to make temperature control. I don't want volume to be fixed. Reason temperature fixed, okay, because volume is piston displacement, and piston displacement is the one which we are controlling. So volume is to be varied through variation in piston displacement. Temperature, volume can also be controlled by mechanism. So we can control the temperature. We already discussed, if temperature of the gas is rising, throw the heat out. If it is losing heat, take some heat outside so temperature remain constant. So in this case, if we make sure temperature is constant, then the applied variation in volume, and that is also piston displacement, because area is constant, only displacement is going to affect my pressure. So this will make a good system in which we know there is ideal gas equation, there is a pressure, volume, temperature. If somehow temperature is constant, pressure will only be affected by displacement. Then we want to discuss, so dependent variable is gas pressure. It is depending upon an independent variable which is piston displacement. So now we identified piston displacement, temperature as independent variables in which it is good if we fix this one also. So only concentrate here. Pressure is my dependent variable and extraneous variable noise effects such as due to room temperature is keep on changing. So if there's a pressure can be affected by room temperature is changing, fluctuations in the voltage, and our power supply problem. So these be my extraneous variable. He says uh, if it is room temperature problem, name it Z1. If it is excitation volume voltage problem, name it this. Or there's any, for example, any other problem. For example, wires are very loosely packed, heating problem. This. So pressure can be affected by volume and temperature and dependent variables. He says, remember, volume is again as a function of x and t. Why? For example, if temperature is increased and I do not fix my piston, piston will expand. We know that when gases has high temperature, they expand. If piston is not fixed, if they are low temperature, gases contract. Condition it is not this. So again, pressure depends upon this. Again, volume depends upon this. If I somehow fix my temperature, then only x will be factor that is affecting my results. So we have a good discussion in which we are able to find that I want to design a test system to calibrate a pressure system in which want to know what is my independent variable, what is my dependent, and what is my extraneous variable. Now we will go towards our second example, and I will discuss with you. So just be ready to be with me. What is this? This is a composite ship. It says the manufacturer of a particular composite material requires the mixing of percentage by weight binder resin to make a gel. The gel is used to impregnate on the fiber to produce a composite material in a manual process called here. So in fact, what is layup? First, simply, this is carbon fiber, for example, fibers shape. This is simple. I apply the resin, epoxy, mix with resin. Epoxy, for example, it is a it says a binder with resin, binder epoxy. It's a binder plus resin. When I apply this on it, then fiber becomes solid with the passage of time. So initially they are just sheet. I place one sheet, then I put my gel here. Gel is a mixture of resin and binder. Then I put my second sheet because I want to make how much this is thick. If it is more thick, I will apply more sheets and I will apply more gel. Gel is a mixture of binder plus resin. So when it solidifies after 2 hours, 3 hours, or one day, you have your composite product. So this is all called, and it is called hand layup. Why hand layup? You apply things manually. You place your fiber sheets and you apply binder resin manually. So it means if there is a different worker, might be he will apply more. If there is another worker, he will apply less. So this problem can arise. So now we know what is composite, what is hand layup. Hand layup is a procedure in which manually we place the fiber sheets. Fiber sheet is here. When fiber sheet is placed, then we apply our resin, which is mixed with binder. So after some time it cures, so it becomes a solid thing. So after some time when it becomes solid, we will have this output and it is fixed. For example, it was for this one, fixed solid thing. So composite material is made mixture of composite material is a mixture of resin plus fibers in which resin we apply the binder, so it is solidified. Otherwise it will not solidify. Otherwise it will remain liquid as long as we don't mix them. So we need to mix them. Why we need to mix them? Because when during storage we keep them separate. When we want to make a product, we mix the binder and resin, because when they are mixed, then they will become a solid things with the time. You might be you have used these resins at home. For example, when your some metal parts or some plastic parts they break up, then we mix two tubes, separate tubes, binder and resin. So when you mix them and apply them, they become. So composites have many products, ships, your chairs, your you can say drones, missiles, cars, everywhere. So this is how composites are made. So now in summary, composites are made by many methods in which we discuss hand layup, in which there's a sheet of fibers, carbon, whatever, and we place resin on it. Resin on it. So when resin is placed on it, it becomes solid. Why composite? Mean mixture of fiber plus resin. Composite mean mixture of fibers, resin, and when it solidifies, you have your product. So this is our target. So what is this? Is saying when you make a composite, the strength of the composite, it is a strong composite or it is a weak composite of the finished material depends upon the percent binder. Means we know we mix binder with the resin, but we don't know at the moment. For example, if it is 30%, 70%, or 20%, 80%, or you can say 25%, 75%. So which is good ratio? Which ratio we should be apply so that which performs the best, which gives us the strongest one. So one of them will be the strongest one, other two will be the weakest. So a mixture of binder plus resin, if a 20% binder, 80% resin, or 30% binder, 70% resin, which is a good combination? That good combination will give me the strength. So now we are going to perform an experiment in which we will see which is the good ratio. He says, however, the strength may also be layup operator dependent. For example, what is operator will do? For example, you find that 30 70 is a good ratio. 30%, for example, binder, 70% resin, they will give you the ideal ratio and it will give you perfect bond. But what you see, worker is not experienced one. What worker will do, since it is a hand layup, so he will just like paint, he will dip the brush in the resin mixture. So okay, Faris, I will see. Okay, if there's any, for example, absent, you can tell me. Okay, and for example, if worker can apply more brush or it can apply less. For example, look at here. This is the brush. If I am pressing more and I am dipping it more, so it will give me different application. It means if even I fix my resin ratio, worker hand, worker ability, worker experience will also affect my thing, because worker is directly working on it. It is just like paint. If you are painting, I am painting, I dip my brush in the paint, you also dip your brush in the paint. So it is my hand sense. Then how I apply it on the wall, it also depends how much I am pressing. Might be I'm pressing more, you are pressing less. so it will affect the output result. He says will also keep these things in mind. So what is the target? Find the best strength binder and also design the test in which operator effect is also there. So test matrix to randomize the effect of the operator means make a test system in which you will not only vary the percentage ratios but will also vary the operators to see if it is affecting my result or not. It is possible. My system, my procedure is such a good enough. If I keep on changing the operator, still I will get same result. Operator A, operator B, operator C, they are making same product, but and also the result strength is the same. It means operator is not affecting my results. But in most of the cases, operators are affecting our results. So it says, please, when you design your experiment, design such a way that not only the mixture ratio, which is binder plus resin, but also the operator, they also be identified whether they can affect result or not. So again, we should able to identify what is my dependent variable, what is my independent variable, and what is my extraneous variable. For example, I want to measure the strength of a product, and it depends on how much resin plus binder was mixed, and if there is any operator person is this. So tell me, have a discussion with me. What do you think? Which is the independent variable in this case? Sigma strength is the independent, resin mixture is the independent, or worker is the independent variable. Please discuss with me what you think. Which thing I will apply independently? Which is independent variable? Very good answer, Abdul Bari. Excellent. Excellent. You are you are starting to understand that when you design an experiment, identify your variables. Yes, resin binder is first my independent variable because what I want to measure, which is good mixture. I apply more resin, less resin, so it is my first independent. And sigma is dependent. It is depending on this. If my mixture is bad, strength will be poor. If mixture is good, product strength will be good. So it is dependent variable and it is independent variable. Workers can be, we can identify as extraneous variable. What is extraneous variable? We know they are there, we are unable to control. Why? For example, you are 10 students. I tell you, take 10% of, for example, it is fixed 30/70. I give all students same ratio, same mixture, and ask you to make a composite. Your hand strength, your working methodology is all different. You are a human being, so I cannot control this. So worker can be my extraneous variable. Might be everything is fixed, everything is same. I am unable to control. Even for example, today you work, you are in very good mood, you will work very friendly. Tomorrow, again same person, same expertise, your mood is very bad. So you do bad. So you are not in control. So you can be the extraneous variable, human power. So now we already in fact discussed thing. It says target is to good strength value, which is a dependent variable. Independent variables are percentage binder ratio. Operator, we already discussed extraneous variable. Why? Every time you will apply, might be your hand pressure, your dipping in the liquid might be it is different. So extraneous. He says, so what is the good test method we will apply today? A simple test method we can think. For example, he says, we have three ratios: ratio 1A, ratio 1B, and ratio C. For example, ratio 1 can be 30/70, ratio B can be 280, and C can be 60/40. So we decided we will take three ratios. But at the same time, we also want to make sure if my strength not only depending upon the ratio, it is also depending upon the human beings or not. Okay, if it is also depending upon the human beings, what we will do? We will take operator 1, we will take operator B, and we will take operator C. So we have decided three operators, and we will give them same ratios. We will ask them, for example, Mr. Ahmed, you will perform three experiments. Experiment 1, 30/70, experiment 2, 40/60 ratio, and experiment C, 20/80 ratio. Similarly, we will ask operator B, 30/70, 40/60, 20/80. Similar operator C, third. So this is how we can plan our experiment, in which we can find not only which is the best ratio, especially after when perform the experiment. Means I will perform a tensile test experiment and we'll see if I perform tensile test experiment, each operator produce three, and we might have 9 curves, and we will see which curves are different and why they are different. So we can test this. As you can see here, three operators, three tests. Test 1, fixed for all, 30/70 ratio, test B, 20/80 ratio. Do you think there's one thing we are ignoring? I am saying do A first, then perform B test first, then perform C test. Do you think every operator should follow the same procedure? Means everyone should follow the A test first, then B, then C, or they can change it. What you suggest? What you suggest? Anybody can answer. Can I change the order of the experiment for different operators? What first thing come in your mind? It is good idea, it is bad idea. Answer me. For example, for operator B, for operator C, I say no. You perform C first, then A, then B. Then operator, for example, B, C, A. So I am changing the order of the experiments, these things. Answer me, do you think it is a good idea? It will help us? Anybody? Abdul Bari says no. Mazen says bad idea. So do you think it's a bad idea? Uh, in fact, it is your choice. You are the designer. You will thought. It can be good idea, it can be bad idea, but it looks at the moment that since the ratio is fixed, worker is fixed, so might be if we switch these things, might be it will not going to affect my results. But again, as I told you, remember one thing, when we perform experiments, we want minimum changes. So good idea is that if he is doing A first, it should also do B for A first, third one should also do A first. So to be uniform. Now we discuss today and we understand this concept very well that when you perform some experiments, make your identify your variables very well and try to be have minimum variables, and if there are variables changing, try to be minimum variables to change. If they are not important, they are indirectly affected. So I know strength, this is what I want to measure. I know there are three mixtures I have decided. Remember, if you are a student, you are a designer, you can decide no, you will not take three mixtures. You can take 4 and 5 mixtures. Yes. Do you agree with me? You want to take more or no? Everyone will perform not 3 but 5 experiments. You want more ratios, you want more experiments to be more sure. Do you think it is a good idea? You will do it? Yes, Abdul Bari says yes. Yes, it's your choice. If you think you have time, you have 3 days to perform experiment. Okay, go for 5, no problem. What will happen? You will spend more money and you will spend more time, but you will have more results. More results is also a good idea. You are spending your money, you are spending your time. Yes, time is money, and dollar is money, real is money. Fine. For more results, you can have much better answers. So yes, definite. So you can go even for more tests. It's your choice. So now you can make a test system design in which you say you will going to take 5 test ratios or 3 test ratios, and you are going to take, for example, 3 operators. Now you can also search no, I will go for 4 or 5 operators to see the effect of different operators. Then you think, I will fix the sequence. I don't want to change them unnecessary. So make the sequence also fixed. So make things more easy. So don't change things if not required. In fact, whatever is written here, we almost discussed. In the analysis of test, data can be combined. The results of each block will include each operator's influence. Yes. Now what will happen when we perform experiment? It will be one sample. After testing, I can say I tested it sigma z for operator 1. This is second sample. You can test it. You can say sigma z1 and ratio b. After the test experiments, you made 9 samples, 3 operators, 3 ratios, 9 samples you tested, and all the time, for example, you found C ratios was giving you the highest results for all. Highest results. So strength ratio C is highest. Then you found that operator B, his strength is much higher than operator B strength. The component you he made was much better than Z1 and Z3. So you can also say not only the ratio C is the best one, the operator Z2 is working the best one. He is the excellent operator. He is more experienced and he knows how to do work, how to apply these things. So you also now you know experiments in which you can find the effect of not only the ratios but also the operators. So this test, it is hand layup test. If it is hand layup, it means it is manual test. If it is a manual, there's no machine involved. So you need to find the effect of the operator there. So this test of mixture will help you to identify the strength of the operator. So this is how you will see. We will see calibration next time. So today I am stopping here.